Thank you. My name is Tim. I'm an addict. Thank you very much for having me here. Um, so I think I'm going to be talking about step 12, but I'll talk about some other things first as well, because I don't know, there might be some people who are new. Um, that could be anywhere in the first 20 years is new in a sense. Um, and it never hurts, I think, to talk about step one. Couple of points. I won't belabor the whole question of step one. It's a big topic, but in the preamble, it talks about, or in one of the readings rather, it talks about the obsession being a continued and irresistible uh, thought of using. And doesn't mean continuous. There's a difference between continuous and continual. Continual is the whole time, 24 hours a day. Oh, sorry, continuous is 24 hours a day. Continual is it comes and it goes. Like when you've got a light bulb that's on the blink, and sometimes you switch it on and it comes on, and other times you switch it on and nothing happens. And that was what tripped me up. Uh, so I've been clean since the 24th of July 1993. But um, I first started getting clean in 1990. And I can be all right for a while. If I've had a really bad rock bottom, then I'm so horrified at what happens that I can cheerfully stay away from all substances for a while. And I get lulled into thinking, look at me with my common sense. I've learnt my lesson now, and I think I'm fine. And I think, well, I can trust myself. Look at how sensible I am. So I start to trust myself. And then the self that I trust says, let's have a drug, let's have a drink, let's have a drug, let's have a this, let's have a that. And because I'm in the habit of trusting myself, I do what my mind says and I'm off to the races again. Um, I think it would have been easier to accept that I was insane if I were permanently insane. But it's an insanity which came and went unpredictably. And that's what makes it tricky. Which means I've got to have my life in the care of a power greater than myself 24 hours a day. Because I don't know at what point my mind is going to flip and say, a drink is a good idea, a drug is a good idea. There are some other things that I've gotten up to over the years, for which there are 12-step fellowships. Let's not go into details, but I think my sponsor said to me once, "You're such a pig." There's almost nothing. There's almost no. Gambling is like the one thing that I just don't get. Everything else, yeah. Um, so it's continually recurring idea that a drink or a drug is a good idea. Because I don't know when it's going to hit. I've got to be in the higher power's care the whole time. If I've got divided loyalties between me, you know, my selfish way of living and the higher power, let's hope that the desire to drink or drug does not hit when I'm in one of my self moments. If it hits when I'm in one of my self moments, then I'm screwed. So I've got to be, this is why I think it says in the big book, faith has to work in and through us 24 hours a day. And there's a part of my mind which is never going to be quite right. Now, I can live a perfectly good life. I've got all of the normal things of everyday life. But I was walking past, there's a block of flats near where I live where there are some ground floor windows. So you walk past and you're right next to their window sills, and someone had the window open, and there was a glass of red wine from the night before which had been left near the open window of this ground floor flat. And as I was walking past, I thought, I could stick my hand in there and grab that and drink it. The thought literally occurred to me. Now, luckily, over the last 28 years of being in recovery, properly in recovery, uh, I've developed a healthy skepticism towards everything that I think. What do I think? I don't care because I live a program rather than just saying, hey, brain, what do you think? Oh, I'll do what you've just told me to do. That was basically how I lived. If my brain talks to me in my own voice and then I think I'm saying it, I think I'm thinking it, I'm not. My brain is thinking it at me in my own voice and I think it's me. So because of the training, I've learnt to adopt a skepticism towards the information that my brain fires at me. Now, God can fire information at me as well, and there are three forms that it talks about on page 86. An intuitive thought, inspiration first, spirit first, intuitive thought, mind, decision on practical level. And they come at me too. I don't think thoughts, I receive thoughts. The question is, where am I receiving the thoughts from? Before I got to AA, there was only one source, which was my ego, my alcoholism, my addiction, my whatever you want, the devil. You know, people use different words to describe it. When you've only got one voice to listen to, you have to do what it says, because what else are you going to do? Sit there like a potato for the rest of your life? You've got to do something. So you follow the only voice that's there. The point about recovery for me is it gives me a different voice to listen to. Well, first of all, it makes me realize I am not the voices in my head. I'm the person that gets to pick between those voices in my head. And the 12 steps have given me a method of rejecting the old set of voices which led me astray, not just with drink and drugs, but with other stuff too. And it's enabled me to be quiet enough to listen out for the inspiration, the intuitive thought, the decision that comes down the tubes from the higher power, which was there the whole time. And occasionally, very occasionally, it would peek through during my drinking and using years. But I didn't know what it was. I didn't know that this is, this is the voice which contains all direction and strength you ever need to handle every problem. No one told me that's what it was. I just thought, well, that was a nice thought. I didn't realize that if I formed a relationship with that voice, like it would literally solve all my problems. I had to be told that. So, what's recovery about? I think recovery is about recognizing that part of my brain is fundamentally broken, um, and that I need to be in the care of a higher power to be okay. There's one other point as well. It talks in the big book, it talks in Bill W.'s 12 Steps and 12 Traditions about the double-edged, the twofold nature, the double-edged sword. The obsession we had it this evening. The obsession, which gets me to have the first one, and then the physical craving, which kicks in, which means I can't moderate. I didn't want to moderate. When I tried to moderate, I couldn't. It's just not on the menu. But there's a third thing, and the third thing trips people up. For me, to drink or take drugs or to engage in certain other behaviors, it's like swimming out to sea. I don't get to pick when I come back. When the current takes me, then I'm out. If the currents turn and wash me back up onto shore, great. But I'm not in charge of the currents. Once I wade out into the sea, I'm not in charge of the currents. They may wash me back up, they may not. Now, what people are pretty down with usually is the idea that if they drink or use today, then, there might be a few days of carnage, Uh, but then, when it gets bad enough, you just come back into recovery again. Well, if you're lucky, and this is the third element. So, number one, I'm powerless over the first drink or drug, left to my own devices. Once I've had the first drink or drug, uh, then I'm off to the races that evening. But there's a third layer of powerlessness, which means I might want to come back into the world of recovery, but be unable to. I might not even want to. A little click might go off in my head where I just say, well, bugger the lot of you. I'm just going to see it through to the bitter end. And my friend Paul drank again in 1995 after 2 years, and it's 26 years later. He's tried to come back a few times and can't. And this is I've talked to a lot of people over the years, I've sponsored a lot of people over the years who slip, and almost invariably, the delusion is that they're bringing themselves back from the slip so that if they were to slip, well, maybe there'd be some wreckage, but which of us can't handle a bit of wreckage? There's the delusion that they can necessarily come back. And unfortunately, experience over the years reveals that's not always the case. Step 12, there are three elements. So there's having had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps. What does that mean to me? You ask anyone on, 10 days in a row, you'll get a different answer. You ask me 10 days in a row, what's a spiritual awakening or spiritual experience, you'll get a different answer. So today is today's answer. It'll be different in a week's time. Um, the simplest way to put it is, uh, if you imagine the universe, in the universe, there is a planet. On the planet, there is a city. In the city, there is a theatre. In the theatre, there is a play going on with a bunch of actors playing parts. Now, the world, as I knew it, was the play. I was playing a bunch of roles in my life. I had no idea I was an actor playing those roles. I thought I was those roles. I thought that everything in the material world was literally all there was. So whatever role I was playing here was it. I had no idea that there was something more. I think the truth is that I'm spirit that happens to be living in this physical form now. Um, the wonderful Anne Lamott says that death is a fairly major change of address. It's not the end, it's something else. I like that. I mean, whatever your beliefs are, it's a great line. Um, the spiritual awakening is awakening to a realization that there is more to me than I think someone calculated the chemicals in the human body. If you were to like sift them out and then go and shop for them, it would cost like £2.50 or something. I'm more than that. I'm more than just, there was a Star Trek episode where they found this weird kind of life form which was unlike anything they'd ever seen before, and they found this way of communicating with it with radio waves or something. And this life form's term for the way it described humans was bag of water. Because we're 90% water and we're in a bag. So, I'm more than that. Um, I'm not sure I fully realized that I was a kind of like a brain in a jar when I was drinking. Um, so that's the spiritual awakening, which means everything's fine. If stuff happens to me in the material world, it no longer dictates my experience of the universe. Um, how I feel is not simply a function of what happens to me, which it was when I got here. If you did something, as Bob Bazant says, uh, life is fired at you at point blank range. Well, it is before the spiritual awakening, after the spiritual awakening. I've been given enough tools today that, in the Matrix where he puts his hand up and the bullets drop rather than hitting him. Uh, there are ways of literally doing that with emotionally difficult experience of like holding them at arm's length so you can assess them and figure out, do I really want to be dragged into this bullshit? Hell no! So I won't be. Now that takes a while. It's taken a long time to learn how not to react to stuff. My friend Tom says that for every year of, he's got like 44, 45 years. He says for every year of recovery, he gets about 1 second of pause time. So I've got about 28 seconds now between something happening and me figuring out whether I'm going to go ape shit or zen. Um, Occasionally stuff gets, when I'm not paying attention, stuff just shoots under the radar. Um, Sometimes stuff just blindsides me, but I'm far less affected by stuff than I used to be. We tried to carry this message to other addicts. Good luck. As Maureen once said to me, you can broadcast all you like, but you can't get into their living room and waggle their aerial. So you can't get hung up on whether they get it. I mean, we love it when they get it. Um, but sometimes I was a very difficult sponsee. There's a story where a man's in a bar and he sees someone sitting next to him. He says, "Sir, do you know you've got a banana in your ear?" And the man says, "What?" And he says, "You know, you've got banana in your ear." And he says, "What?" He says, "Banana. You've got a banana in your ear." And he says, "I can't hear what you're saying. I've got a banana in my ear." So even when he managed to get the message across, it doesn't have the same meaning to them as it did when you sent it. So you do your best with step 12. I think the deal is this. Um, I'm to have a good life. Yeah, I have a job and all of family obligations and all of that stuff. I'm married, whatever that means. I've got there's a lot going on in my life, which is wonderful. But the real thing, there's a line in the big book where it says, we're intelligent agents, spearheads of God's ever advancing creation, which means I'm permanently on an undercover mission to channel whatever the higher power wants to channel into the lives of the people around me. I don't necessarily even know what it is that is being channeled. I just have to make myself available to the material. I remember someone asked me to sponsor them 1,000 years ago. I can't remember when. And at some point she said, "You want to know why I asked you to sponsor me?" And I thought she was going to say, "Well, because you're so spiritual," or something like that. And she said, "No, because you were sitting there with a hoodie with holes in it, and you didn't care that people could see that you were in a hoodie with holes in it." And I thought, if I can go through life not caring what people think about me when I'm wearing shoddy old clothes, then that's good enough for me. So it wasn't the fine words, it was the hoodie. But I made myself available to the material, and that's what happened. Um, Having said that, the job is to carry the message of recovery. I'm in a bunch of different fellowships. Um, to carry the message of recovery far and wide to whoever is interested, within meetings, outside meetings. I'm constantly making connections. I go to all sorts of different meetings. I go to all sorts of different events. I'm always on the lookout. Um, I did a count a little while ago to just out of curiosity, because I seem to be getting a lot of telephone calls, and um, I counted for a week. How many people do I have interaction with in recovery to carry the message to in one way or another? Sponsees, non-sponsees, all sorts of other things. And it was about 60 in 1 week, and that struck me as about the right amount. I need to be talking to about 60 people a week. That seems to be God's will for me. I'm fine with that. And I get to practice these principles in all my affairs, which is really fulfill my obligations, yield to other people under almost all circumstances, and keep my big fat mouth largely shut, which I'm going to do now at 20 minutes and 2 seconds. So thanks for listening.